Hello, mentors. Welcome to our podcast series, Mentorships in Education, brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I am your host, Judith Epstein. I am very excited about the wide range of experts who have volunteered to give up their time and expertise. They will share their innovative ideas, their exciting perspectives, their rich resources, and their research with us. Please continue to delve into these topics on their websites and with your legal counsel, healthcare provider, and education professional. Our guests will have information that will be relevant to mentors supporting struggling students, parents, teachers, administrators, legal support, and health professionals. We will address all levels of education with issues that affect academic performance. Our goal is to open discussions and introduce a variety of approaches to those searching for information in a free venue. So mentors, let me introduce our guest for today. Hello, everybody. This is Judith Epstein, your host for the podcast Mentorships in Education. We have a special guest with us today, as we do every podcast, but this young man is someone that I've been in communication with over the last few months, and I've become so enamored with him and what he's doing and his enthusiasm. He oozes passion. And one of the interesting perspectives that we're going to hear from this young man is his perspective of teaching English in Taiwan. His name is Theo Joubert, and he started out as a physics and math teacher. Welcome, Theo. Thank you so much for spending all this time with me and your wonderful sense of humor.
I would like to say that the highlight of this podcast is when you called me a young man.
Well, from where I'm standing, you're a young man.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on your podcast. I really do feel honored. Thank you.
Thank you.
And hi to the audience listening to us.
Thank you. I want to tell them a little bit about you. As I said, you started out as a physics and math teacher, and you taught in South Africa for quite a few years. You taught grades 5 to 7 in South Africa. And then you ended up coming to Taiwan in 2003. You began to develop your own teaching system, and you began to compile your own books. You started your own school so that you could teach students using your own system. And you have created an environment for kids where they can learn in a safe environment and understand that mistakes are not a tragedy. They're part of the process of learning. You give credit to the kids for effort. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about. You teach English in an environment where there's a tremendous amount of pressure for doing things perfectly. And your school has a very different perspective that even in the United States, we have a lot of emphasis on, being perfect and doing things well. And you've kind of moved the bar. And it's going to be this is an important message that I want parents and teachers to understand, because I think it's a transition that we need to make in this country where kids can feel comfortable in making mistakes and understand that mistakes don't make them look stupid. Actually, mistakes are what we see people make when they have the courage to speak out and put effort into something where they're not comfortable. So one of the techniques that you use is you have kids read novels when they're at the point where they can do that, and you teach them the words ahead of time, and you have them practice with each other, and they are able to improve their pronunciation and their fluency. So I want to get started by asking you to give us some information, if you would, Theo, on your journey to becoming the character that you have become.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Um, yeah, we talked about it before, a little bit about my past and my
Yes.
childhood and my
Yes.
family. And
Yes.
yeah, I I think the experiences I had growing up are what put me on this path. And I had a mother who was so full of love. Like she just loved every human being that she met. And I had her constant love, her support, her gentleness, her kindness. And then I had a father who loved me as well, but he was a very hard man, a very demanding man. And through nobody's fault, I grew up very insecure and very scared. And part of it was moving many times. Part of it was some tragedies in my family. But throughout my childhood, I felt that I wasn't good enough, and I was constantly scared and insecure. And so as a kid, I felt kind of broken. At the same time, I was happy. Like parts of my childhood were perfectly beautiful. I had a loving family. There were some tragedies. There were some terrible things that happened. But I always felt loved. But within myself, I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel good enough. And
I know you said that you had been to 10 schools by the age you were
yeah,
of age of 12. That had to be traumatic in and of itself.
yeah. I think every year every few months you arrive in a new school in a new town and you don't know anybody. And actually, like I was thinking earlier, like from until I was 6, I was like kind of carefree and happy and excited to go to school. Like I remember like getting my school shoes the day before and wearing them all day, and I couldn't wait to go to school. But at the end of grade 1, we moved to another city, another town, and I don't have a conscious memory of the things that shifted me, but I became scared. I felt like I didn't belong. And each time we moved, it just kind of got worse. I didn't know how to play the games. I didn't know how to play the sport. I didn't know where to go in the school. I didn't know the little social norms that everybody else seemed to know. So it kind of set me up where I always felt a little bit out of place, and I don't quite know how things work, and kind of made me feel lonely. And I never fit in with the group of people, with the big group. But I always found one person in every school. There was always one person that within a few days we connected, and we built a good relationship. And that person in our little bubble, I was perfectly happy. But if I moved out of that bubble into the bigger sphere of all the people, I just felt completely lost. And I felt that most of my life. Just, I don't know how to fit into like normal society.
Well, I'm glad.
But those those experiences are kind of what give me the compassion for students who arrive at my school. And the mother comes in and the child's in the car.
All right,
And
before you start talking about that,
too scared to come in. Okay.
Before you start getting there, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I want to kind of stay with this a little bit, because one of the important things you talked to me about when we were talking about your journey, and I know it's something that you do now with your children at school, is that mentors became a really important tool for you in working with, when you went into each of these schools and you developed a one-on-one relationship. That one-on-one relationship kind of taught you a lot of the things that you needed to do. But you also told me an amusing story about how it didn't always work.
As a student,
yes.
When I was a child.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
My brother bought me a soccer ball.
Yes.
I have a lovely brother. Everybody in my family is lovely. But my brother bought me the soccer ball, and I took it to school, and I was so excited to go and play with other kids. And then some kid came, punched me in the stomach, and took my ball. And I wasn't really upset that he punched me or about the pain. I just I felt hurt. Like, why doesn't he want to play with me? And then I kind of forgiving, and I went to go and ask them, can I play with? And they said no. But then luckily I had a Doctor Who book with me. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I think like another thing that kind of helped me as a kid is I loved reading. And so I just spent a lot of my time reading books where the stories were beautiful, and I got lost in those stories. You talked about mentors, and there's always been somebody in my life that has believed in me maybe when I didn't believe in myself, who supported me when I didn't know how to support myself. And there's always been that person or that book or some source of information that just helps you to take that next step, right? And today I'm on this podcast with you because you've helped me to take this next step. Like I decided a few months ago, I want to share who we are, but I had no idea how to do it, right? And then you send me a message. I know I'm going off topic, but I'm going to finish this one sentence. You sent me a message to say, I'd like you to be on my podcast. And part of me was shocked and alarmed. And another part of me is so excited, like, because I want to share who we are, because I think we have some ideas that can help kids that feel the way that I did as a kid. Okay, get me back on track.
I just want to go back. I'm glad. Thank you very much. And because you've had such a diverse life experiences, I think it's important for our listeners to understand that where you're coming from is what gives you the knowledge to be able to move forward with where you're going. And you talked a little bit to me about how you went into the Army, and that changed your life. And again, we'll go back to the mentor. You said that there was a mentor in the military that believed in you, and maybe you can share a little bit of that, and
okay,
to kind of emphasize, the importance of having someone who believes in you. Right.
Okay, so the Army was surprising in a way, because I should have been scared. I should have been fearful, but I don't know. I got on the train to go, and my father, this big, strong man, cried. I'd never seen him cry, and he cried, and I didn't. And I don't know. I just felt like stable, and I went there, and we had the chance to volunteer to become leaders, and I made the decision that I don't want to be scared my whole life. So I stepped forward and volunteered to do that. Part of the reason I was able to do that is that I met a guy, this huge guy, like a gentle giant guy, strong guy, but gentle and kind. And he supported me, and we joined this together. And just having him there as support helped me to get through that phase. Anyway, we finished training, and I'm selected as one of the few people who selected to be a leader. And I'm the most shocked person in the room. And I end up at a military printing unit in a city, and I've got a bunch of guys that are under my control, so to speak. While I was going through this process, I'm still, even though I've become a leader, I don't really feel very confident in my ability. And I'm still struggling with a lack of self-confidence. And a series of events happened, and my sergeant major's wife and I end up having a conversation. And I end up having a conversation with her and telling her how I feel, that I feel not good enough, that I feel I'm not able to help well. And she has a completely different opinion. She looks at me and she says, I think you're a really beautiful person. I think you have such a good heart. I've watched you over the last few months, and you really care about the guys under your control. And I think maybe that's the important part of a mentor or somebody who looks at you from outside. And sometimes your own limiting self-beliefs don't allow you to see yourself or your own strength or your own power or your own potential. And so like that lady, by seeing me and noticing strengths in me and telling me, shifted my path. And so for me, I think it's every person I meet, I want to observe them and notice them and tell them what I see, right? If it's positive. But
I'm glad you qualified that.
There's been a series of people like her who just took the time to say, hey, Theo, like, I know you doubt yourself right now, but what you're doing is great, and you are helping people. and kind of gave me the courage to keep moving forward and to keep learning and keep growing.
Now, you had a similar experience when you started to teach, and you didn't do so well the first year.
Yes.
And again, you had someone who was an authority figure, someone who you respected, who
Right.
put you under their wing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I'd actually like to mention him by name. His name is Mr. Wright, Neville Wright.
Okay.
And he'll be happy for me to share his name in public. He actually taught me at senior high school. And then when I got to university, I'm in my third year doing teaching practice, finished teaching practice, and I get a note to say that I have failed teaching practice. And later I get another note from Mr. Wright, and he says, Theo, on the note says, I need you to meet me in my office. So I go to his office, and he tells me that he was sitting in the staff meeting, and they said, there's this guy, Theo, and he's really not suitable to teach. He did a terrible job in his teaching. And he said, hey, I know that guy. He's a great guy. He was my top student at school. I believe in him. Give me some time with him. I will help him. Don't worry about this. And so he spent time with me, and he didn't train me. He didn't teach me. He didn't do anything. He just sat with me and he said, Theo, I believe in you. And he said, I want you to teach my students. He taught electronics at our college, and I did electronics with him. And he said, take something that you know and go and teach them. And I went and I taught them, and I just walked in the room, built a relationship, chatted to them for a while, and then just helped them to understand some part of the work they didn't understand. And it was so easy for me and so natural. And it took literally, his intervention maybe took 1 hour. He talked to me for 10 minutes. I prepared, I went and taught, and then he went and told the college that I'm fine. Everything's great. And then the next year I got a distinction for practical teaching.
Wow.
And
talk about one extreme to the other.
It's a lot of it is what you think about yourself in your head.
Right.
And
I think you said to me when we were talking that you realized when you were in the military that you were holding yourself back because of your self-image, what you were thinking about yourself.
But you can realize it, but still not know how to change it.
Right.
I know I'm holding myself back. I know there's damage done as a kid that's got my neural pathways running on the wrong line. I know it, I understand it, but in real day-to-day actions, it's difficult to change. It's difficult to get off that line that you run in for many years.
So you ended up moving to Taiwan, and in the process decided to open up a school. What were the experiences that you had in Taiwan that made you realize that you had to open up your own school and do things your own way?
Okay. I need a few minutes to set that up because I came here the first year. I had never taught English before. I mentioned I have a physics, math background.
Yes.
And so I arrived here. My experience in South Africa teaching public schools was really difficult for me. I struggled to make it work. Too many students, too many subjects, and it left me feeling like I can't do this well. I came here, I walk into the school I'm working at, and they have a very well-structured system. Every book, every lesson, everything is planned, prepared. And all I've got to do is go in and deliver the materials. They built this structure like a car. I can walk from here to Taipei, but if I get in a car, that structure will help me to get there faster. And this school had this structure that I just had to sit in the driving seat and make it work. And it was still difficult, but within a year or two, I felt so confident. A number of things. We had smaller class sizes. We had a structured system. We had support staff. Each class was shared by 2 teachers. We only have 2 classes a week. So I will teach one class and a local teacher will teach the other class. But that framework changed everything for me. That framework, that system gave me power, gave me the ability to produce a good result and to make a difference very quickly and much more easily than before. And then
I'm just going to
before long.
stop you for one
Yes,
second
sure.
because I want people who are listening to pick up on that those very important points of how the structure in the system in Taiwan is what gave you the confidence to be able to
Right.
move forward and do a good job with teaching. So you had this foundation already. You didn't have to go in and create it. You had it already, and it wasn't like, you know, reinventing the wheel.
In some level, but so this is an independent school, and they used a franchise system. So they paid a franchise to use their model, and it did empower me. It did help me, but it also had massive holes in it.
That's the point I wanted to make, is that
many of the systems, many of the systems here are people who see English as an opportunity to make money. So they're a business person who opens a business, and they just bolt together like a Frankenstein monster. And this system, in South Africa, I had to prepare every lesson myself, and I never taught the same lesson twice in 8 years. Here, I taught the same lesson 5 times, 6 times, because I would teach different classes the same lesson repeatedly. And so the system was flawed, but it had enough structure that it helped me to improve. At some point, I realized that, okay, this structure helps me to be a better teacher. It frees me up from the content to focus on my students. Now, I'm able to teach well within the structure, but could I create my own structure?
Exactly.
If I'm using somebody else's structure, what happens when they take the structure away? What do I do? I need to know how to build my own structure. And so I set about the task of making my own books and my own system and my own structure.
Theo, do you think having a structure in place for you gave you the global view of what a structure looks like, and then you were able to move and transition because you had an idea of what was wrong with one, and so you were able to move to another?
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So even
I needed that.
Yeah.
And I think every system is broken. There is no perfect system. There's no such thing, right? Every system's going to have, and if you design a perfect system, next year you're going to have students that have different needs, and that perfect system doesn't work perfectly for everybody. So I'm not trying to build a perfect system. I just set about the task of how do I create something that supports me, that supports my strengths, that enables me to focus my attention on working on helping my students grow up well. So I'm not constantly thinking on how to teach English or how to teach content. I can shift my entire focus to teaching children, right? So I had that initial structure, and I could see that this structure helped. And then if I can create my own structure and I understand how to make the structure, then I can use it. And as I use it, I can incrementally improve it, right? So we have a system. We've got 50 books, we've got 1,000 lessons, but every day I'm working on how do I iron out the bottlenecks? How do I make the path smoother? How do I make the transition from each lesson smoother so that teachers are not struggling to teach and my students are not struggling to learn? And just one last point. This system I consciously created as a support to support me. I was a teacher who didn't have confidence, who didn't know how to get a good result. And I found a structure that helped me, and then I built my own structure that could help me better. But that same structure can support any adult who cares about helping kids to do that. And so over time, we've had some teachers come here who arrive in my school like I was before, have no confidence in their ability to deliver value. But if they plug into our structure, if they work inside our system, they can work with children every day and slowly build relationships, learn how to help, learn how this machine functions until they are able to drive it. So I wanted to build a system that can extend my reach. I can teach one class at a time. If I have books and a system, then 2 teachers, 10 teachers, 20 teachers, 100 teachers could be teaching kids to learn English using that structure, using that system. And another way of thinking of it is that as a teacher, you build up experience over years. You get a feeling of how to do things. You know how to build the structure. And when I wrote my books, when I made the system, what I'm really doing is I'm taking my experience and building it into the books, building it into videos, building it into PPTs, building it into the system. So another person doesn't have to gain the experience the hard way. So really, it's just the books, the system, all of it is just kind of trying to squeeze your experience into tools that you can hand over to other people, and you train them how to use those tools, and you empower them to get a good result over time.
You talked, when we were discussing this earlier, you talked about cram schools, and you said that was the term used in Taiwan for some of the schools where the kids go to learn English, where the focus is on scores and testing. And you're talking about your school that you developed with a different structure. Can you be a little specific as to what you mean by the structure that you created? What are the main components of your school that make it different from these cram schools?
At the end of the day, we still teach English, right? We still have to teach them how to master a foreign language. And there's certain things that we do that are maybe fairly standard in some ways, but I think that it's just a shift of emphasis. So if you come to my school and from day one, I'm focused on pushing you to get 100 so that your parents think I'm a great school, I forego building a foundation. I forego building a relationship with you. So maybe the core element is when parents come here, they sit down with Catherine, my business partner, and she guides them to understand that we will give you the result you want, but we need to build a foundation. We need you to give us time so that we can create a happy environment. The first few lessons, our whole focus is on making your kid feel learning English is fun. Learning English is exciting. They come here, they have a wonderful time. We make them work, we make them learn, but we don't put pressure on them to get a good score. Over time, we set difficult tasks and we set high standards and we expect them to do their job. But first, we build a relationship and we get them to trust us, and we make sure that we give them the foundation they need so they can make progress. So I think the core element is create the right environment that helps children to learn.
And to feel safe. To feel safe.
Yes.
So they can make
and
a mistake and not be criticized.
Right. I don't want to insult the cram schools. Every person who's working to help kids has their own focus, their own. But I feel that the human brain learns best when it's relaxed. Where if you are in my class and you feel that I care about you and you feel that you can trust me over time, you relax. And you're able to learn. The human brain has the ability to learn. A language is built into us. Just if you have enough time and you hear things enough and you focus your attention enough, you will pick it up. You need time, and you need to feel safe. And especially in a language, you need to feel comfortable to make mistakes. You need to just talk as much as you can, and you're communicating an idea. And you're not thinking about which word to use. Is the grammar correct? You're just thinking, I have this idea I want to share with this other person. And I like this person likes me, and this person's interested in me. And then my students want to talk to me. And after a period of time, they forget that they're speaking English, or they forget that they're using a foreign language. It's just their brain is trying to push an idea through the air with words, and they're not worried about the mistakes. And so if they're not worried about mistakes, they talk more. And they make more mistakes, but the mistakes don't matter because over time, the mistakes iron themselves out. And I've done this experiment with my students. I will watch them and let them speak, and I won't correct their mistake. And they'll make a mistake, and I just leave the conversation to keep going. And they will stop, and they'll kind of rewind in their brain, and then put the correct version and then keep going forward again. They self-correct. But they're not doing it because I'm going to be angry. They're not doing it to show their English is good enough. It's just their brain is relaxed, and they'll say something when they say, yesterday I went, and they'll just shift. They'll make that little self-correction. And it's by hearing English enough, by outputting enough, by having the confidence and the freedom to just be yourself and make mistakes, you learn more quickly. So there's so many elements, and I'm trying to figure this out for myself. What are the core ingredients that create a learning environment that helps children to make progress? And over time, our students will get 100 at school. They'll get a good score, and they'll satisfy their local teachers and their parents. But they'll do it because we've built in a good foundation, and they can actually progress faster. We start off slow. It takes time to build in the foundation. But once that is set, they're able to move forward and learn fairly quickly. I don't know if I fully answered your question.
Yeah, well, you did, but I'm going to pick you up on a story that you told me, because I think this is a good place to share it. You told me that you met a mom in a restaurant one time when you were out.
Right.
And maybe you could share that story, because that, I think, is indicative of the struggle that children have and the progress they can make when they're in the right environment and they have people that support them. Okay.
I'm going to try to not use that student's name. I don't want his family to feel. So I might stumble when I'm trying to remember who he isn't. Anyway, so we went to a restaurant, and the lady came up to us and asked, do we teach English? And we said yes. And then she told us about her son. And this story, there's 100 versions of the story. There's so many mothers who come to us and their kid is struggling at school. This particular child, he'd already been moved into a special class for special need kids. And the teachers at some point kind of give up on him. And at some point he believes he can't do it. He's not smart enough. He's not good enough. He can't make progress. And the mother asked us, can she bring her son to our school? Because she's gone to other schools and they will say, we can't help you. Your son's ability is, he's not going to be able to learn. And part of that is the schools don't want failing students because it makes them look bad. Anyway, so this guy, he comes to our school and he's nervous. He's scared to go inside. And for these children, they're coming into my school and they know they have to learn English. And this particular boy, he's been failing for 5 or 6 years at school. It takes so much courage for him to walk into my classroom and to face a foreigner when he has no idea. The only idea he has about English is that he can't do it. And for me, it's so encouraging when a boy like that walks into our school and 6 months, 7 months later, he starts to find that actually he can do this. He does understand it. He's able to do it. And we will ask our students occasionally to recite, to remember something and stand up in front of class and say it to us. And teacher Catherine will have like a lucky draw, and she will choose a random victim, a random lucky student, right. and she the lucky draw, which the children don't feel is lucky, chose this boy. And in the moment when she found that he had to come up and talk, like in her heart, she's so worried that he's going to feel pressure. And she kind of said, you don't have to do it, or you can bring your book. And he said, no, I'm ready. And he went to the front of the class and he stood there confidently and he recited the thing he had to recite. And at the end, the entire class interrupted by clapping, applauding for him.
Oh, that's so
heartwarming. And the interesting part is that he's in grade 6. His classmates are mostly like grade 3. There's these tiny little kids and this big boy in their class, and they don't look at him and feel, what's wrong with him? Why is this big kid not able to do what we can do? They look at him and they recognize that he has made progress. And they applaud him, spontaneously applaud him. And I think it's part of of creating the right environment is that those kids have been with us for maybe 2.5 years, his classmates. And from the beginning, we say to them that when you enter our class, like we're like a small family, right? And we are going to treat each other with respect. And we're going to look to see the good things in each other. And we're going to support and encourage each other. And when that boy went to the front of the class confidently and he did his talk, and those little kids spontaneously clapped hands, encouraged him. It was like a moment where, like you talk about aha moments, right? When you say, okay, this idea is working. If we treat our kids with love and respect, and we gentle, but also firm, and we set a high standard, but we support them to reach that standard, it works. And over time, like in the beginning, I'm treating my students with love. Teacher Catherine's treating with love. All our support staff are treating them with love. But the beautiful part is that if I have 10 students in a class, over time, those 10 students are my assistants. They are helping me to love my students. And for that boy, when his classmates acknowledge that he made progress and they show him respect, that acknowledgement from them can be more important to a child. So I think, like in my school, my most valuable resource, and I don't want to call human beings a resource, but my most valuable resource is my students, is the community, is building those relationships. I have students that have been with me for 10, 11, 12 years, and they'll be in the same class with the same group for a long period of time. And those relationships that they build with each other over time are so valuable in helping us help them learn and grow their confidence in their own ability to learn, to grow, to improve over time.
I don't want to embarrass you, Theo, but I do want our listeners to know, in case this didn't come through while you were talking, that this was a very emotional story for you, and you got very emotional while you were telling it. And this is one of the characteristics, the qualities, the traits that you have that have endeared me to what you are doing, that your passion and your caring and enthusiasm for what you do in working with these students is just so out there where we can all see it. I want to ask you a little bit about the teachers you have in your school, because you shared with me a little bit that some of the teachers you have really are not formally trained, but that you spend a lot of time working with them and teaching them about the important characteristics of your school, of your structure, that what is important. It's not so much the academic that the kids are learning, but this environment that you talk about creating. So can you talk a little bit to us about what the priorities are when you're working with your teachers? You've alluded to some of them, building the environment in the classroom. You talk about having a lot of fun and making things, having some light moments in the class and supporting each other. But what are some of the other things that you do? How do you encourage your teachers to develop, as you talked about before, doable lessons with challenges? There's a very fine line there. So I'm wondering how you develop that.
Okay. I want to begin by just going back a bit to when I worked in the previous system. I used to train our new teachers, and I've always found training frustrating. It's very difficult to train a person, and even if you could tell them all the right things to do, it doesn't mean that they are able to do that, right? And there's this idea of, I can't remember the quote now, if I tell you how to do something, you might understand. If I show you, you have a better chance to understand. If I let you do it and I guide you while you're doing it, you can internalize that and you will really deeply understand it, right? And so, like before, I would try to train teachers and try to think, the right things to tell them, and then how to train them those right things. It never really worked. And a shift that I've made in our school is when somebody comes here and they want to work here, in the interview process, that is the most important part of my training. I will tell some new victims. I will tell a person who comes here to work a story about one of our students. I will tell them some story that encapsulates who we are. And if that person cries during the interview, then I know I know that this is a person who cares, right? If I tell them a story about the boy I told you about now, and they don't cry or they don't show any emotion, then I feel, okay, maybe they don't, this is not their focus, right? I'm looking for people who've maybe suffered in their childhood, or maybe understand what kids go through when they are struggling and they don't have support. And so when I hire somebody, I'm looking to see, do they care? Are they powered by their heart? And so the people who join us are people that I'm quite confident care about my students. And I will tell them, I don't want you to work here if you're just looking for a job. I want you to join us if you actually really care about helping kids grow up. And to illustrate this, is a lady who came to work here, and when she came here, she had no confidence in her ability to help children. And I talked to her for a while and found out that she's roughly my age. She's a local lady, and she's got 2 sons who are wonderful young men. And through the process of the interview, and later when she came to work here, she told us I'm not good enough. She told us my English isn't good enough. She told us that she doesn't believe she can give enough value to our students. And we told her that you're a mother. You have helped 2 young boys grow up well. And your son's English is perfect. How did that happen? And she says, well, she just bought him lots of books and played him lots of CDs, and she created an environment at home. So I said, okay, you're hired.
Right. Boy, you can't get a better resume than success with your own kids.
Exactly. And then the training is, when you join our school, from the first day, you will be working with my students. And maybe you're in the office, and when they come to school, they'll hand in homework, and you help them finish the homework if they didn't do it. If they need to recite, you will just listen to them, and you've got the book in front of you, and you can guide them to say it better. And or you can help them to do a quiz, or you can help them to fix the quiz. There are 100 things that we do outside of the classroom. So when you join our school, you will be in a supporting role where you don't have to teach. Teacher Catherine and myself, we teach every class, and we know how to make the system run. And our support staff just help the kids to polish up the details. And so this lady who came to work for us, maybe for the first 6 months, all she's doing is just helping kids. And after class, if there's something they don't understand, she will just help them to practice. And she will take our books home and read them and make notes and translate them and ask us how to say words. And we've got every lesson. I've got a PPT that if you teach, you can run through the PPT as a guide to guide you through the structure of the lesson. We've got the audio for most of our books so that a new teacher can listen. So we've got support structures. But the most important part of our training is come and work here with my children, with our students every day. And after 6 months, you've built a relationship with those children. You have a feeling for their level, what they know, what they don't know. You've worked with them one-on-one. You've worked with them in a group doing the quiz in a relaxed setting. And then when you're ready, we're going to ask you to take them to a classroom, and you will have them in the classroom for 30 minutes, and you will deliver the quiz. And the quiz is not really a quiz. It's just a way to get them to practice certain things. And our teachers will learn how to manage a class by doing the quiz. But the quiz is all structured. It's very easy. They just have to give them a piece of paper, guide them through the process, and help them to fix their mistakes, right? And And eventually we'll say to our staff, when you're ready, when you feel confident, we would like you to begin teaching a class. And what we'll do is like a bicycle with training wheels. Teacher Catherine will be the left wheel, I'll be the right wheel, and I will teach a lesson, and then the next lesson you will teach, but we will help you if you need help. And the lesson after it, I will teach. And so the two experienced teachers are on either side of you, and no matter what you do, we will make sure that our students are kept on the right path, that no holes, no gaps develop. And if my staff ask me for help, I will help them, but I don't train them. I don't tell them how to teach the lesson. I don't tell them anything. I just say, here are the books, here are the system. You've worked with us for 6 months, a year. You've helped students. You know the books. You know what they have to do. You help them with homework every day. You have a feeling for the overview of the entire system. When you feel ready, you go and you teach by yourself. I'm not going to stand in the classroom. I'm not going to watch you. I'm going to trust you to do the best that you can do. But I'm going to check that the students are still online, that they can handle the work that you taught. But I'm not going to go and tell you what you did wrong. I'm just going to leave you to teach. And you need the same principle that applies to my students, applies to my teachers. My teachers need to go through a process of making mistakes, of teaching badly. And my customers are protected because Teacher Catherine and I will work extra hard to make sure that the kids don't lose value over time. And we have many cram schools will have one support staff helping the kids. We've got a whole bunch of people. We give more value than what they pay for. So I feel comfortable to put a person in my classroom and let them learn by doing.
One of the analogies that you used with me when we were talking in creating an environment, and maybe we'll kind of end this topic with this analogy that you talked about when you talked about the apple tree story that you talked about in creating an environment. You don't always have all of the answers. You don't, might not know exactly what to do in every situation, but you gave me this analogy, and I think it's a beautiful analogy.
That single idea helps me. Maybe every idea that I share is something that I've thought through to help myself keep my balance, to help myself reframe things. Because when you teach, you can't do everything perfectly. You can't. It's not possible. And so Teacher Catherine has a garden in front of the school, and she takes care of those plants. And we do have an apple tree, but it's still a baby apple tree. And the analogy I told you is that I don't need to know how that apple tree goes from a seed to a plant to an apple. But if I put it in the garden and I take care of the soil and I make sure there's enough water and sunlight, that apple tree has the ability to grow and produce fruit. I just need to create the right environment. And in my classroom, the things that I don't know far exceed the things that I know. There's so much that every one of us don't know. And for most of my life, that held me back. I'm just focused on all the things I don't know. And I've reached this turning point where I'm focusing on the things that I know. I know enough to help kids. And I know enough to create an environment where they feel loved, where they feel safe, where they feel secure, where we build a relationship. And where this whole community, parents, teachers, students, all of us are working on the same project, and we all support each other. And the environment that helps my students grow, helps my teachers grow, helps me grow. This school, the main reason I have this school is to protect myself. Teacher Catherine's got my back. She will, anything I do wrong or anything that doesn't seem right, she will communicate our value to our parents. And I can just show up every day and go into my classroom and do my best. And together as a team, we're going to iron out any little problems that happen over time. And we don't need to know everything perfectly. And one last thing is maybe the key ingredient in this whole thing is time. Enough time. If you have enough time, this particular lesson can go terribly wrong. But over 1,000 lessons, if you get most of them right and your kids are happy and comfortable, over time, we automatically figure out how to self-correct. So I think if I can just focus on the big rocks, do my students feel we love them, we care about them? Do they feel safe? Do they treat each other with respect? Do they understand the value of hard work? Life is difficult. There are things you have to do that you don't want to do. We're going to make you do those things because we love you. But we're going to do it as gently as possible, and we will apply some pressure when necessary. But if we can just take care of the big rocks, safe environment, we do set a standard, we do give you difficult things to do, we do expect you to do your part. If we get all of the big things right, over time, our students can grow up well, and they can learn to be confident in their ability to learn, and they can learn the value of hard work. They can learn the value of treating other people with respect. And I don't need to understand every detail of how to help kids grow up. And one last point, I told you this before, that I read a book when I was a younger man, a book about, if you're a parent, you might feel inadequate at times. And you need to understand that your child is kind of like a child of the entire environment. The tree he climbs is his parent or her parent. When your child falls down and breaks their leg, the ground, the gravity, they are a parent. Everything in their environment that they interact with is influencing, teaching, guiding, giving them feedback. And I am not the sole caregiver to our students. They have parents, they have family members. I am playing one part. I can't save everybody, I can't do everything, but if I'm part of a community, together we can work on creating an environment that helps a child grow up well. And I don't think this whole life thing was set up for me to be Superman and save a child and do everything that they need. I just have to show up and do my part. And each of my teachers has different skills, different strengths, and that's fine. So, some of my teachers, one of the reasons I don't train my teachers directly is that I don't want them to be like me. I want them to find their own way, because maybe there's something they have that my students need. And so there's a whole environment, there's a whole world helping every kid grow up. And
you've made so many
we
points.
do our part.
Yes.
We do our part.
You've made so many points, and I think you talk about praise kids for the effort. So important. Praise them for the effort and not for being perfect. Create situations for them to make progress. You talk about understanding how to give them a challenge, but make the next step the right size for them so that they are successful. You talked about limiting the choices. One of the things you said to me before, and I kind of extrapolate it from what you've been talking about today, is ignore people who discourage you. Find people who point out what you did right. And I love that. I wrote it down because it's true. Sometimes we just, someone says we can't do something and we really believe it's true. And we need to move away from that and move forward with the things that we feel that we can do. I think I'm an example of that, because when I started doing this podcasting, I didn't know how to turn on the computer, so I had to learn so many things, and there were so many people who told me it was going to be a daunting task and there wasn't any way I would be able to work the technology I needed to work, let alone to make the contacts I needed to make. So I think I'm a good example of that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about before we run out of time is that you've created some amazing tools for teachers who are teaching language. And I think some of those tools could even be useful to teachers who are teaching social studies and math, because the concepts you use of animation and to keep kids interested in what it is you're showing them, and the very small bits of information that you present to kids so that they're not being overwhelmed with a lot of information. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, is there a process to your, the I don't know, I call it the creative juices that you bring to bear when you're developing some of this? And also, if somebody wanted to see what you have out there, would they be able to get some of this stuff if they wanted to?
Sure. I'm happy to share everything that we use. Right now, our whole system runs in our school. I'm trying to figure out how to transition our materials online so that I can share it with more people. And we can talk later about where we can find that and how we can do that. You talk about the process. The part of the process is when I came here, maybe for the first 10 years, 15 years, I just taught all day, every day. So there was a period of time when I taught in 5 junior highs, 5 cram schools, and 2 kindergartens. And there was a 3-year period of time before we opened the school where I worked 7 days a week, every day. And so like every single day I was teaching. So like kind of like an action research project. And early on, I used another system and I saw the value in having a structure, and I decided I wanted to make my own structure. And so then what I did is I would teach during the day, and then when I got home, I would sit and try and think, how could I make this better? Here's something that happened where things didn't work. How do I solve that problem? So one example is our children in the first year only do listening and speaking because they're absolute beginners. In the second year, they will begin phonics formally. And when I started here, I had no idea of the big picture. And the system, they had a letter writing book, and they wrote A to Z, capital and small, a few times in the first year. But there was no structure in place to make sure that they fully internalized the alphabet. And that when they got to our second year, that they knew the letter sounds and they had the tools so they could begin learning to read and write. And I had maybe 7 or 8 classes that were beginner level at different points along the scale. And they all shifted to our second year, and every one of those classes couldn't read because we hadn't built in the foundation where they knew the letters. They'd internalized the symbols, they could write them easily, and they knew the letter sounds. So when I'm teaching, there'll be this bottleneck. There'll be this big sudden step where my students just fall down flat and they can't take that next step. And when I discover there's this big jump that they can't get across and I struggle as a teacher, then I want to build materials and systems to flatten out that step. So we go along quite smoothly, and there's suddenly this big step. And you can try to be a great teacher and work harder to overcome the step. But if you just flatten it out, if you just break that step into 100 smaller steps, and you recreate your books, and you make sure that in the first year, you're building in that foundation from day one. When you get to the second year, there's no problem. So like now my students, when they get to the second year, it is so easy. Because the first year, while we're doing listening and speaking, we have systems in place to make sure that ABC, writing, reading, the letter sounds is automatic. By the time they finish the first year, there's all the core words they need to know have been built deeply into their body. They've internalized them completely. But they've done it a little bit at a time, over a year. They don't notice. They never felt any difficulty along that path, because every time I find a step that's too big, then I will go back to the drawing board and think, okay, how do I flatten out that step? This bunch of students are struggling here. I'm going to work hard to fix the problem with them. There's no way around this. We're going to do it the hard way. But I'm going to make sure that the next group doesn't go through this pain again, and I don't go through this pain again. So then I will make the book, I'll make the worksheets, I'll make the animation, I'll make whatever it takes to go back and flatten out the path. We have this learning path that goes gently and slowly, and if you could do this step, then you have the tools to take the next step. But every system's going to have some part that you didn't anticipate. And so every time I find the step is too big, I didn't design our system properly, then I go back to the drawing board and I build things in earlier in our system to make sure that when they get there, they've got the tools, the skills, the ability to take that next step. So I think you're talking earlier about don't listen to the people who are negative. And I think the human brain is evolved to look for danger, to look for problems. And we have to consciously reframe. We've got to consciously choose to look for good things. And I have this desire to help my students. I want to help them to grow up, and I'm using English as the medium. You could use anything, right? But I'm teaching English, and I want to help them to learn easily. And I want to be able to teach easily. And I will do whatever it takes to get that result. And because when my students go through this path, and they get to our reading class and they sit with me and we have conversations about life, the universe, and everything. And we've got that connection and they're comfortable and we can talk about things as human beings. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. For 2 or 3 years, they just look at me. They don't have enough English to talk to me, right? And we'll play with balloons and we'll play games and we'll find ways to interact and build a relationship by interacting. But there's this moment where they have enough English. And there's this explosion where they find the confidence and enough words combine, and you've got a relationship. And then my students just begin interacting and communicating. And we can get to the part that I love. I can interact with them as human beings, and we can talk about life and who they are and what they want to do and what they want to be. And they've got the language, the tools to do that. And so if you have a goal and that goal is really important to you and you believe it's possible to achieve, then you're so excited to reach that thing that whenever an obstacle appears, whenever a so-called negative event appears, I don't care about the obstacle. I don't care about the negative event. I look at it with interest and think, okay, how do I get over this obstacle? How do I get around it? How can I move the obstacle out of the way? Can I get somebody else to help me move it? What do I do to get to the goal? I don't care about the obstacle. I don't care about the negative person. There's something I want to achieve. I want to figure out how to help kids grow up well. And I want to figure out how to make systems we can duplicate so that other adults who care can help me. So whenever something doesn't work, I'm kind of excited, actually. Like, I'm kind of excited that this isn't working properly. And then I begin the process of thinking, how do I solve this problem? And you ask, how do you get the creative juices working? I think you need to choose a problem that you deeply care about. And if you are able to solve that problem, something shifts, something changes. The future is better in some way. And if you have that driving force of some vision you're working towards, the human brain has the ability to find the way to get there. Like it's just endurance. I will not give up until I find a way to make the system better.
I think that's the best way to end. And I hope that the listeners will use some of the information that you have given them to go back and evaluate how they might be able to work with some of the students that they're going to have this year. Parents will be able to look and see how their kids are doing well, even though they may not think they're doing well because they're trying so hard, and we need to give them credit for the efforts that they're putting into the work that they're doing, because they may not be doing it all right, but they're trying so hard to do it right. And sometimes we don't recognize that with some of our kids. Theo, this has been really exciting for me to be able to speak with you. You have a lot of creations that we're going to be posting on the website, links to some of these, so that people, if they want to find out more about what you're doing, find out how to get some of these creations that you have that they're almost like cartoons. They're to teach kids certain pieces of a puzzle. You don't give them a lot of information, but you give them little pieces of a puzzle. I found them fascinating. They can certainly get in touch with you if they want to know more about your program and how you have developed a program that is so successful, we're going to have all those links on the website, and I hope people will look for those when they're listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Yes.
Can I add just one last thing?
Sure.
Before we say goodbye?
Yeah.
What I really hope that we can do moving forward is figure out how to build a community of people like us who care about helping kids. I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. But out there are many adults, teachers, parents who care about helping kids grow up well. And I'm looking for that audience. I'm looking for that community. How do we find a way that we can connect and we can share experience? I am more interested, I'm happy to share any idea that I have. I'm more interested in finding other ideas to help me make my system, myself better. And I think what we need is like an online community of people who have the same vision, the same heart, and we share our resources. And we met on LinkedIn, and there's so many people on LinkedIn that are doing beautiful work, and people who are doing amazing work and nobody knows that they even exist. And you do a great job of you've built a platform where you share important voices in this community. And I hope that we can build that community further, that we can figure out how to connect more deeply and help the people who are offering value to share that value with us, so that we're all stronger together.
Thank you. One of the reasons I'm doing this is because I don't think professionals in education network with each other enough. I don't think we share some of our successes. I don't think we share our failures. We're doomed to repeat the same mistakes that other people have made because we don't talk to each other enough. One of the best ways I tell teachers all the time to learn is to find a teacher that is doing it right and go in and ask them if you can go in and sit in their class and see what they're doing. So I appreciate that. That's exactly what I am trying to do here, is bring people together who have different perspectives, different ways of approaching working with our kids that struggle. And when I say kids that struggle, I mean gifted kids. They have their challenges as well. I mean kids on the spectrum. I mean kids who have come from difficult homes, who might be very bright. They have social, emotional challenges that sometimes we don't take the time to recognize. And they're heroes. I tell my kids all the time, they're my heroes. And I hope they learn as much from me as I learn from them.
Right.
So thank you very much. And
thank you.
I hope that...
Thank you for your encouragement. And I think this is the most important thing, is that we encourage each other. Encourage each other. Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Theo. And thank you, everyone, for being with us. And I hope that you will stay in touch. Please continue to send me your suggestions and your questions, and I will try to address them as we move forward. Be safe, stay well, and stay connected. Thank you. Thank you, mentors, for being with us today. If you found this podcast of value, please visit justeducationfirst.com to subscribe to our blog and Mentorship and Education podcast, so that you may continue the exploration with us. Our goal is to provide a free treasury of information for our listeners, so they can become acquainted with the amazing resources that we have available to us. We want to thank all of our guests for giving their time and sharing their wealth of information with us. Please also visit their websites and explore more of their resources to further your pursuit of the topic. Hope to hear from you at justeducationfirst.com. Have a good week, and thank you.